Hello, everyone. My name is Danielle Miranda, and I'm the host of the Estrella Podcast. Before we get started and I introduce today's guest, if you would like to know more about Estrella, a brand new platform that is coming that has been made by psychics, astrologers, numerologers, oracle readers, anybody under the spiritual realm. If you would like to learn more about what's being built by these wonderful individuals, then I really encourage you to go to Estrella.chat, whether you are going to be an interested customer or you are in the profession and in the spiritual realm. You'll get to learn a lot of information as to what's going on. You'll get to be on their newsletter and sign up for that. And you'll actually get to have real-time videos of the progress of the company. So Estrella.chat, give it a shot. I'm really excited for today because I get to interview the wonderful astrologer, Joe G. He is the owner of Mercury Rising, and it's an astrology business that he has. And what's really cool is, Joe, I was browsing on your site and I saw that there was some terminology I really didn't understand.
Oh,
And
cool.
I was really intrigued about you being certified as a Hellenistic and Electional Astrologer.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know if we could talk more about that and if you could just talk more about your business.
Yeah, of course. So Hellenistic astrology is just astrology that comes from the Hellenistic era. So it's a it's a type of astrology that kind of came back into popularity around the 90s with Project Hindsight, alongside with efforts from like people like Chris Brennan and Austin Coppock from the Astrology Podcast. Also, Dimitra George, who's also another big astrologer, kind of spearheading this movement. And if it really focuses more so on traditional techniques and the traditional planets, as opposed to using also like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, like people are used to. And electional astrology is a subset of Hellenistic astrology, because Hellenistic astrology really encompasses all the astrologies that come from that era, which could be your personal astrology or your natal astrology, which is the chart of an actual person. It can be mundane astrology, which is the astrology of the world and world events. It can be medical astrology, which is the astrology of health in your body and how to improve and take care of it. And then there's electional astrology, which is the astrology of figuring out when is the best time to do a certain thing. Alongside being an astrologer, I'm also a project manager, and I also work in marketing. And I felt like electional astrology was just the best thing to complement what I already do. So a lot of the times I spend a lot of time just planning people's projects and using astrology to make sure that the project is started at a good time that will yield good results. That's really the core of my practice, I would say.
So, for those that may not know, and I'm going to ask this question, when you say Hellenistic, you don't mean like hell, right? This is something that's
Yes.
actually positive, if I may ask.
Yeah, so Hellenistic is just from the Hellenistic era in classical history. So it's the
Ah,
astrology that comes from the period in which Greece took over Egypt, and then they started the Hellenistic Empire. So there's a lot of crossovers in Hellenistic astrology between Egyptian astrology and Greek ancient astrology, and they kind of like married each other in this nice little way, and there came Hellenistic astrology.
Now, the Hellenistic and the electional astrology pieces that you're talking about are very specific. May I ask why those two? Why did you
Yeah,
choose to study those two specific types of astrology?
yeah. When I became interested in studying astrology, I really wanted to make sure I had a very solid understanding of the entire history of the craft. And Hellenistic astrology is kind of like the oldest astrology that we have as far as the Western world. It's not necessarily the oldest astrology, but it's this astrology that resembles what we do with astrology today the most. And so a lot of the things that we use today can be directly traced from that. So that's where a place where I felt was very comfortable for me to start, and I continued my astrologic studies in very much this chronological sort of approach, alongside with Hellenistic astrology. I'm not certified, but I've done quite a lot of study on medieval astrology as well, and now I'm dipping my toes into the Renaissance to understand how things have changed and shifted, and eventually I'll get to the modern times and see how some of the ancient stuff has informed our modern approach to astrology. So the reason why I chose it is just to really have this well-rounded understanding of where things come from, because I think in the spiritual realm or in spiritual professions, it's very easy to tap into intuition, which is not a bad thing. I think it's a great thing, but I think it's also important to know where that intuition might be coming from, or what symbol sets or what sort of uh, human history we might be tapping into with that intuition that we're not even aware of. And so that was my approach to picking Hellenistic astrology as a starting point. But then electional astrology kind of just happened by accident, because, like I said, I work in marketing, and I've also done project management for about 4 years now, and I just kept using astrology for my clients, and it kept working. So I'm like, I might as well just make my astrology all about this.
So once you got one client, they just kept coming, huh?
Yeah, so I actually really lucked out that my first job really in the marketing and project management space was in an astrology company.
Oh, wow.
So I had a lot of test subjects, so to speak.
That's really neat. So if I may ask, is that how you kind of got your foot in the door with astrology? Like your interest was brewed from working with the astrology company?
Yeah, I think my interest into astrology was already there before that, but it wasn't until I really had to study astrology to write an article about it. I think it was Mercury retrograde of 2019. I think I had to write one for Mercury in Scorpio or something along those lines. And I knew what Mercury was, I knew what Scorpio was, I knew what a retrograde was, but I didn't know how to put all those things together. And so
Right.
I just tossed myself into it, and I read a couple books, and I wrote that article. And just in writing it, I just or even studying it, I just realized that like I really enjoyed um, approaching astrology more seriously rather than just a hobby. And yeah, so that's really what started. Because by the time I was working with that astrology company, I was already studying astrology, so it was just kind of everything just lined up perfectly.
How it usually works. It's really neat. So if
Yeah.
I may ask, you said that you've always been interested in astrology. Did that stem from you getting readings done on yourself?
Yeah. Actually, no. I think I didn't get my first reading until I made that decision. I'm like, I'm gonna be an astrologer, and then so I was like, if I'm gonna be an astrologer, I should get a reading to know how this thing looks like. And then that was my first astrology reading. But really, what kicked me into this was just going through a rough period in life, like most people do, and trying to look for answers in alternate spaces. And I remember coming across this podcast called the Positive Heads Podcast, and they kept talking about this book called Conversations with God, which is like this guy channeled God, and he asked a whole bunch of questions to God for like 3 books. It's a whole trilogy, and it's quite awesome. And that kind of just opened my mind to like the spiritual realm of things. And I actually got into tarot first. Tarot was really the thing that really appealed to me. And I did tarot readings for years before I even did astrology. But it was really writing that first article and like realizing that there are professional astrologers in the world. I think I didn't even know that was a thing, because people kept telling me, because I was doing tarot readings, and every now and then I talk about my friends' astrologies and stuff, and everybody's like, "You're so good at this. You should do this professionally." And to me, that just sounded like such a ridiculous idea. And here I am today.
And you're doing very well. Very
Thank you, thank
impressive.
you, thank you.
So if I may ask, where are you located?
Yeah, so currently in Seattle, Washington, but I'm a little bit all over the place. I was born in Brazil, and I lived in Canada
Wow,
for a couple of years, and now I'm here.
that is so neat. So do you find that a lot of your clientele is in the Seattle area, or do you get people from all around the world?
Yeah, I think I get people from all around the world mostly, but it's interesting because just recently came into astrocartography. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's
I have
basically
no idea what that is.
ooh, that's cool. So it's basically looking at your birth chart, but with a map of the world. So you can see where particular planet signatures, like places in the world where that signature in your chart is more likely to manifest or more likely to become relevant. And Jupiter in astrology is a planet of abundance, good fortune. It's the planet of support and people coming to help you and all that thing. And just yesterday, I decided to take a look at my astrocartography chart just to see what was up. And I noticed that Jupiter for me goes over Hawaii, and a good chunk of my my clients are from Hawaii.
That is,
The astrology company that I worked for actually was also in Hawaii. So I was like, oh my God, there it
that's
is.
really cool. Awesome. So you've been doing this and you obviously have developed a love for it.
Yes, absolutely.
What do you find to be the most gratifying part of what you do?
Hmm. I think focusing on electional astrology like I do, it's really nice to, and I think I also offer electional astrology in a different way than most people do because usually when you go to an astrologer for an electional reading, all you get is really just a date and a time and when you should start
Mhm,
your thing. But
mhm,
the way that I work with my clients is that I really break that whole project down into 3 sessions and we're talking to each other the whole entire project. And it's just so much fun to be able to use your astrology to help a client materialize whatever project that they're doing. Like I have a client right now who's writing a book that she's been trying to write for like 5 years, and just now she's mustering the energy to do that. And I just love to be able to be a part of that because I remember before I came into astrology and all these things, and I wanted to be an artist, I wanted to be a musician. Uh, I always would love to have that person to just tell me like, hey, you should probably like start working on your album at this time. It's probably be a little better. You release at this time. Your marketing strategy could be like this, and that. And to me, it's just really nice to be able to be that person that I needed in that moment,
mhm.
and to help bring creative things to life. It's really nice.
You seem like you're an artist. I was actually going to ask if you've been a musician
Yeah.
at one point because you have that vibe about you that you
Oh,
either
thank you,
play
thank you.
instruments or that you were like a musician at one point and you toured and did all kinds of stuff. So,
Yes.
how far out for a client will you do an astrology reading for? So, let's say a client may want a reading that's a whole year's worth. Are you able to do that, or do you like to keep it as present as possible, if that makes sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, it does. And I think 1 year. Well, it depends. It depends on it depends on the project. It depends on the session. I think if I'm working with clients that are not working on projects, I think the 1 year timeline is usually the best one because it just gives you a very well-rounded understanding of the year ahead. And the way that I work is that whenever I get a client asking about their year ahead, I really go through month by month and kind of explaining some of the things that could be happening and how to be prepared for that and all that stuff because timing is really at the center of my practice. Um, but I've had clients who are working on like 4 year long timelines for projects, and it's really I love this because I can really like time travel, so to speak, and not just look at their own timing, but also start to think about like, oh, what would I be doing like 4 years from now?
Yeah, that's neat. That's neat. And to think that somebody would actually want a 4-year time frame. I like you
Yeah,
said, I can't
totally.
even think that far ahead. So a year to me is a lot. So to think about doing a 4-year, that's really impressive.
Yeah, no,
On
it's awesome.
On average, if I may ask, how long does it take you to do a reading? I know it's probably different from like a 1 month to a year, but how long does it usually take for you to do astrology readings for a client?
Yeah, I would say probably an hour is the best time frame for me. But most of my project-based readings, they're around 30 minutes, and they're 30-minute sessions, so we get to like have many touch points as the project unfolds. So I like to work with, I'm a very brief astrologer. I like to work with 30 and 1 hour only. Whenever
Yeah.
I start going past 1 hour, I'm like, I really don't have anything else to say.
Well, not only that, I'm sure it probably gets like mentally a little exhaustive for you,
Yes.
right? Because
Oh
that, I
man.
mean, what you're doing takes a lot of concentration and thinking and speaking. Yeah. So I can
Yeah, of
imagine
course.
that could be a lot after like an hour.
Oh yeah, that just gives me flashbacks of doing tarot readings at parties and like reading for 50 people at a time, just like, okay, next, okay, next, okay, next.
What
That
do
was
you,
definitely exhausting.
what do you find, Joe, is the most common um, category that clients want to know about or get read on? If does that make sense what I'm asking? Like, is it
Yeah,
usually
absolutely.
marriage, career? What do you find to be the most common?
Yeah, I can answer that from two perspectives because working in marketing and working for other astrologers, I think I have the understanding of like the wider astrology community versus like my own practice. My own practice, I get a lot of the project based people and the goal oriented people who are just like, I want to do this. How do I do it? But in the wider astrology world, I really do see that a lot of people are often talking about really the cornerstones of life, like your relationships, your career, and just like overall direction in life. I also had a period in my early career too where people were very curious about things around like past lives and more the spiritual side of things. That definitely can be um, a big point of interest for people as well. But I think for the most part, it's really relationships, career, and then for me specifically, the project based readings.
Okay. Have you found that since becoming an astrologist, have you found that you have developed any other gifts from doing astrology?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's less of a I developed another gift and more so I went back to something that I thought I was done with because my whole story with astrology is that during the pandemic, I had just opened my recording studio because at that point I wanted to be a recording artist. And I was producing music for people in Toronto and all that stuff. It was great. But then the pandemic came, I lost my job, and I couldn't afford rent for my studio. And so I had to shut it down. And at that point, that was just like so devastating to me that I was like, you know what, music is probably just not for me. This was a sign from the universe that I should just not pursue music anymore. And so I just went full on into astrology. But then going into astrology, I go back into music again.
It
And
paved the way for you to go back, didn't it?
yeah, it really did. And now, like part of my like passion project research outside of my practice is really kind of trying to map out um, music theory, but also art theory and color theory into an astrology map to help artists get a better understanding of their audience, get a better understanding of their medium and the materials, and what is it that they're here to make, so to speak. I'm really curious and fascinated about that, and learning astrology has really made me understand music theory and art theory in many different ways in a much more robust way, which I enjoy.
Yeah. If I may ask, do you do any other type of continuing education or any other type of studying from books, videos, to kind of keep you on top of your game with
Yeah,
astrology?
yeah, you kind of have to.
Not like a
Currently,
one and done, right?
yes, it's definitely not one and done. Yes, currently, like I said earlier, I'm really starting to explore the Renaissance period of astrology and some of the new developments that came around that time. And that is more of a personal study. I'm just reading a lot of books, especially books by Ben Dykes, who is a researching astrologer who's translated many of these ancient texts for us, and so he really has great texts on ancient astrology and has great footnotes explaining some of like the stuff that was going on around that time, so you can contextualize what they're talking about a little bit better, which is nice. But aside from that, I'm really too busy to to continue studying, and I really feel like the itch is starting to come for me to go back to some sort of school, or even go back to like academia to pursue astrology in an academic uh, a level. That would be nice, maybe one day. But right now, I'm really just so involved in like the astrology world, and it's so hands on that that's really my school right now.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
Nothing
of
wrong with
course.
that. Actually, you are, in a sense, since you're doing your work every day, that is continuing education, because you probably get all different types of astrology readings presented to you.
Yeah,
And some
absolutely.
of them, if I may ask, have you ever had a reading that's kind of stumped you a little bit or challenged you a little bit?
Yes, actually, this is a good uh, tangent into a different type of astrology that we didn't talk about. Because in Hellenistic astrology, we had electional astrology was kind of like the thing where we stopped as far as like all the types of astrology that we had. Then we come into medieval times, you get something that's called horary astrology, which is the astrology of questions, and it's kind of like tarot. So a person comes to you, and instead of casting their own chart, you cast a chart for the moment that the question was asked. So it's kind of like the question's own chart, so to speak. And I used to do a lot of those because they're a lot of fun. And you can do crazy things like locating lost objects and lost pets and all the stuff. And I people, I guess, learned about that practice from me because I um, had a reading with somebody who's pretty popular in the astrology space, and she had lost her dog, and I was able to find her dog with horary astrology,
Wow.
and so I got a whole bunch of readings of like lost pets. But
So they started a trend.
yes, it started a trend, which I had to stop because, to answer your question, I got a reading when somebody asked about their lost cat, and one of the things in these types of charts is that you can see whether you're able to find the thing that you're looking for or not. And the chart was pointing very clearly to the person not being able to find their cat, and the cat probably being in a difficult situation. And that was really rough for me. And that was like really what drove me to stop doing this, because it's really hard bringing bad news as an astrologer. And I think that it's very easy sometimes for a professional to get lost in the space of, I'm really here just to do a really good prediction, and I'm gonna do what the astrology says. I'm gonna say what it says, and this is all my job is. And I think that I don't think that that's entirely the job of the astrologer. Like in a moment like that where I'm seeing that maybe you're not gonna find your cat, I feel like my job is not to just tell you this, but to help you be prepared for that to be a reality. And that can be very difficult. And I think that that's something that psychological training can be really helpful to. And it's something that I recognize that I do not have. I'm more of a project manager, and that's why I focus on my astrology in that lane. But yeah, I think that that's what really stumps me sometimes when clients have this these bigger psychosomatic issues that are outside of little Joe to help or to fix. Because sometimes I think as a practitioner, it's really easy to be in that empathetic space where you just really want to fix the problem for the person, and sometimes you can't, and it's really hard to navigate those moments when you can't, and all you can do is just be a pair of ears.
Right.
And yeah.
How do you balance being able to separate what you do in your career with astrology professionally and making sure to not take that outside of your sessions. So how do you balance, handling yourself emotionally, mentally, and physically so that you are not bringing potential stressors from the readings into your personal life?
Yeah, I think a big thing for me was making this shift from like doing general readings to focusing more on projects. That really helped me just like assume the responsibility of just a calendar keeper and a person who's just organizing your time for you. Because that to me is a little bit more detached than the personal and emotional stuff. Because I think I'm just there to like your cheerleader and to help you get this stuff done.
Right.
And that has been really helpful for me. But I think also, which might be an unpopular opinion, I think skepticism has also really helped me uh, be comfortable with my job, because I think it's always good in a spiritual space to always have like your toe a toe in the skepticism pond, just so you're always open to like one human failure, because even as a spiritualist or an occultist, you're still a human, you still can make mistakes. And I think
Right.
that sometimes it's good to be skeptical of your own skills, even if it's not skeptical of your own practice in any way. But I think that just adding that layer of skepticism, not in the sense that astrology doesn't work, but in the sense that astrology works, but it might not work this way that I'm seeing right now. And that just
Right.
has to be okay. And I think that just allows a lot of room for life to just do its thing as well. I think that it's very easy for us to get wrapped up in wanting to know what's going to happen, or wanting to know how to fix a problem, um, or how to move through these difficult moments in life. And sometimes the only thing that we need to do is just like really sit with them and like live through it and learn what it is that you had to learn in that moment. And I
Yes.
think that keeping that close to me at all times really helps.
Yes. Do you find that your friends and family are supportive in you being an astrologist? Do they support your craft?
Yeah, I it's surprising that my parents were very supportive. Uh but a lot of my friends weren't.
Really? That's
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah, so during the pandemic, when I really made that big shift, a lot of people just thought I was crazy. And so I lost a lot of friendships in that.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sorry about that.
oh, it's all good. It happens. It's part of life.
Yeah.
But I also found many friends that are fully supportive of it. Some of my good friends are regular clients that come all the time. And yeah, my parents have been thrilled to even know that astrology can do what it can do through me.
Yeah.
Because even my dad, who's like a total skeptic, has really come around to it. And every now and then I'll just get a text from him. He's like, is Mars doing something? Or is Venus doing something?
Have they gotten readings from you?
Yes, they have. Yes.
Oh, that is neat. How was that? Kind of switching gears, going from like doing readings to clients you don't know to now doing readings of your own parents. Like, how was that for you?
It was strange. um, yeah, it was definitely strange, because it's weirder when, because more often than not in modern astrology, we're used to thinking about our chart as just us.
Mhm.
But in Hellenistic and traditional astrology, your chart is more so your life and everything that's in it. So if you have a chart and you have a sun, your sun will be in your chart. So it was weird seeing things that are happening to me show up in my dad's chart, and
Yes.
seeing his perspective of the thing that was happening to me. And so that was a cool odd thing to see. But the really cool thing is just seeing the patterns across families.
Wow.
One thing that I noticed is that within my family, we're all Cancer, Leo, and Gemini. We only
Wow.
have placements in those three signs across the entire family, pretty much. Every now and then there's a Pisces here and there, but for the most part, it's just Gemini, Leo, and Cancer. And I've noticed that even reading for other families as well, that there's definitely a bit of like family constellation, so to speak, that forms around these sorts of things. So that to me was really cool. It's like, because people say that like you choose your parents sometimes, and that like you fated to be with your parents, and that to me was like one of those moments was like, oh wow, maybe I was.
How do you manage making sure that you don't overwork yourself? Because, like I said, a lot of what you do takes a lot of mental energy, emotional energy, physical energy, even. So, how do you manage, balancing having your own personal life and being able to do your own things like your music and making sure that you don't work too many hours in astrology?
Well, I'll have to get back to you when I figure that out. But I truly, astrology has consumed every aspect of my life, to be honest. And I'm now beginning to see, because this is my 4th year of practice. So I'm
Wow,
just now,
congratulations.
thank you. So I'm just now beginning to see how that's a problem. And I'm trying to find ways to like leave the astrology aside. But truly, it's just something that I love so much. And my partner is also an astrologer. So it's just astrology speak around the house all the time. And even when I'm playing music, I'm thinking about astrology. How can I play this aspect? Or how, if I'm drawing something, I'm drawing something about astrology. So it's hard to leave it.
When I look at you, I can see that you genuinely enjoy doing it. And I think
Thank
that's
you.
key with anything we do in life is we have to enjoy what we do. And that's why, in essence, you are successful, because I believe that your clients, they sense that when they come to you for a reading. So kudos to you. That's a great quality to have is being
Thanks a
able
lot.
to have clients just have that need to want to get readings from you.
Nice. Oh, you're so sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. It's easy talking to you. You're awesome. I'm enjoying this a
Thanks.
lot. So, if I may ask, how many days do you work 7 days a week? Do you work a couple of days a week? What is like a good schedule for you?
Yeah. I work 6 to 7 days a week. It
Oh,
depends on
okay.
the
So it's every
week. But yeah, it's like I said, I just love my work so much that even on my days off, I just end up doing some other thing that still work.
when
But
you really took your astrology seriously, right? Did you immediately veer off on your own and start your website, or were you doing astrology for the marketing company, the astrology marketing company that you were working for?
yeah, that's a good question. think I think both of those happened at the same time. I think I
Wow,
got the job and I started my website pretty much at the same time.
at the same
But then
time.
my website kind of like dropped off a little bit because I was focusing more on work, and clients weren't really coming right at the beginning of my career. But then slowly but surely, they kind of just like merged and became one
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Do you find that your clients are mostly word of mouth, or do you advertise? Like, how do you get your clients?
Yeah, I find that Google Ads has been really helpful for me. So I do advertise, but really most of my clients come through blog posts. I write a blog post every week about something that's happening in astrology, and that's usually how people find me. And yeah.
You know what I like? I feel like, because I've had astrology readings done before, and they were nothing like what you're talking about. Very, I got the birth chart, the natal chart, and it was okay. Well, maybe around this time you'll find love, or maybe around this
Mhm.
time you'll be successful. What I like about your approach, I feel like it's very practical. It's, it's something that somebody could come to you and say, okay, like, why am I feeling depressed, for instance,
Right.
continuously? And you can actually create your map and say, okay, this is why you find that you're feeling depressed like this. I really like that. You narrow down and you really pinpoint what people are really asking and looking for. And I like that about your approach to astrology. I personally have never heard
Oh,
of this
awesome.
style of astrology or approach. So this is really cool to get a completely different perspective. I didn't even realize that there was different aspects of astrology. I thought it was a one note, one type of astrology. So you are enlightening me with
Oh,
this.
wow. I'm glad to be that person.
Yeah, I had no idea. What are some of your future goals with astrology? What would you like to accomplish or do? Or do you have any plans for anything exciting and new coming up?
Yeah. So right now I have my own astrology channel as well, which is called the Astrology-Channel, and I'm working on a series of original myths because I want to. I really like teaching astrology, but I like teaching astrology in creative and fun ways, and I really wanted to bring some of my music experience that I have and some of my art school experience to. And combine all of that with the astrology to do something. So right now I'm working on a series of original myths for the entire zodiac that kind of like teach you what each of the signs mean and what each of the planets mean, but through a story and through music and song and images. So I started writing some of them, and it'll be hopefully a long ass musical one day.
I love
um,
that.
yeah, thank you. And I did something similar to that, I think, in the spring of last year. That was like my first sort of trial of like writing an original myth and then writing a song for it. And it did really well. So I want to keep doing it.
Awesome. Uh, if I may ask, for somebody who's looking to get into this, in particularly astrology, what practical advice would you give them in order for them to start?
Ooh, that's a big one. Yeah, I think the most important thing as a student of astrology is really learning from before you learn anything that there's no one astrologer that knows the answers to all the things.
Oh, I like that. Can
Yes,
you
because that
expound on that?
yeah, because I think that was a mistake that I did when I was first starting out and looking for astrology teachers and courses and things like that. It's like I wanted to find the right teacher and the right course and the right thing, and that was just going to be the one thing that I would find, and it would be perfect, and that was it. It's very much not like that. I think with astrology, I like to treat astrology more like a language, um, and I think that you become a better speaker when you speak to different people from different places that speak that same language, so you get a very well-rounded vocabulary. So I think that I would recommend that people do that. Try all the different types of astrology. Learn the history of astrology and each of these like big marker movements, because I think those are really important in really painting that picture that we really have been trying to understand what astrology is and what it does for about 2,000 years, and we still haven't figured it out. And it's an endless pursuit. And I think that when you go into astrology knowing that, it becomes a lot easier to actually become an astrologer. Because one thing that I've noticed from working in astrology courses and astrology schools is that there's people who study astrology for years and they never feel like they are able to be an astrologer, or that they're able to start taking clients because of that sort of mindset that there is a right way to do it, or there is like the holy grail of astrology that you'll get to one day. But I think that when you learn that really we're all just trying to figure it out together, you learn that you can do it a lot sooner than you might think.
Yeah. What keeps your passion for astrology? Like, what keeps your fire and your excitement to do what you do?
Yeah, I think it's actually that we just talked about.
Okay.
like this like this idea that it's the one subject that speaks pretty much about any facet of life. I can bring astrology into my music, I can bring astrology into medicine, I can bring astrology into project management, I can bring astrology into anything pretty much. But also, it's this subject that we can never fully grasp, and there's always room for improvement, and there's always room to learn more. And I think that for a lifelong learner, that's like the dream.
Amazing. Have you grown enough to where now you have an assistant, or do you have others that are helping you out with your astrology readings, or are you doing all of this by yourself?
I do have an assistant, but we work together more so on my projects for other astrologers, because I also produce for other astrologers. But my own practice is fully me.
Wow.
Eventually, I will convince my assistant to also help me out with my own stuff. But yeah, for now, it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Joe, I really appreciate your time. You've been amazing, so fun to talk to, so lighthearted. It's been easy, and I really enjoyed it. For those who want to find you and who may want a reading from you, what methods, what means can they find you by, if I may ask?
Yeah, anyone can find me at themercuryrising.com. That's my website. Like I said, I post new blog post every week over there about the astrology that's happening at the time, and it's very much with this practical sort of thing. Every month I have like, what is March good for? And I list a couple things that you could be doing that month that would be successful. And also on my astrology channel on YouTube.
Oh, you have a channel? I didn't know that.
Yes, I do.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
called
And
the Astrology Channel.
how often do you post on that?
I post there every week as well. So I have a weekly horoscope video alongside with the weekly newsletter, and they kind of pair with each other in nice ways.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And again, for those of you who have viewed this podcast episode, if you would like more information on Estrella itself, please go to estrella.chat and sign up for the free newsletter. You'll get all the updates and information as to when we are going to launch, and we'll be able to answer any questions that you may have. My name is Danielle Miranda. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. Joe, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest. And I hope you all have an amazing day.